architecture. I wouldn't use the word tourism, because tourism has something to do maybe with a kind of so exploiting, using things in a kind of happy but not so definitive way. So I think I would say about making an architectural experience. That means to go to places, to have a look to the places, to experience, because it's really a question of experiencing. When you speak about tourism, it has a lot to do with the industry of entertainment. I think architecture is much more than just entertainment. Of course, it has also this level of being pleasant, but it's much more than just. I think it's very important to go to the places. Architecture is something that you can discuss, but you have to. Absolutely necessary. Because if you travel, you can see, feel, experience what other people, our societies are thinking about way of life, way of living, way of staying on the earth. And it's just traveling in this way, traveling and trying to exchange with others, that you get to a point where you can accept people coming here and you are going there. So you can see the things from another point of view, from the opposite point of view, in this sense. Sometimes when you travel, you are the white mosquito in the system. There is no city without architecture, and there is no architecture without city, so to say. Also the buildings alone in the landscape, at the end they are searching for a city, they are searching for exchange. For me, city means to live together, to share experiences, to share way of life, to share ideas, and to deal with this sharing. And I think architecture is the space for this. And architecture, one architecture, another architecture, and make a city. But the city is not only the buildings, the city is also the life that is inside. So one is before the other and the opposite is true. It's the same. So there is a city that asks for an architecture, there is an architecture that makes a city, and there is a society that deals with all of this. There's an ambiguity there, I think. On one hand, it's very important because you have the possibility to live see and hear and discuss about questions that not only your questions, it's not only the question of a smaller society, but you have people coming from outside dealing with themes that maybe has also to do with your point of view, maybe not, but they open some horizons. On the other hand, it's dangerous because it could become a kind of traveling group of stars and starlets going around, making a kind of history on its own that doesn't deal with the real problems. So this is a little bit for me the danger. If you look at the critical journalism as a kind of method, I don't think so. I think what is important is always to be open to the situations and to be open also to the history of the situation. That means that if you have to build in a context that is, for instance, I'm building something here in Thessaloniki, and you have these Byzantine churches, but you have also the new city. And how do you decide what is more important, what is less important? It's only because something is older that has much more importance than something new, or is something new that is better than something old? I think it's always the question of to understand where you are, in which situation you are, which is the needs of the moment, which are the needs of the permanence of the culture. So it's not always that something old is better than something new. It's not always that something new is better than something old. To me, it's really every time another stuff. The only continuity is that you take in account everything. But then you have to decide, and you do on your own, but also in exchanging, in knowing about what is really the point now in this place. You need to be constantly open. So don't go there to say I want to put my signature. I want to put there my kind of statement that it's me and me against the world. So it's more a kind of listening, but you have also to react. You just not if you just listen, it's nice, but you are asked as an architect to add something. And what you add should be, as far as possible, something that is still open, or you must be aware that everything you do creates a new context. So there is a context before your intervention and the context after your intervention. And this new context after the intervention is a new one. And somebody that will come later to build there will be taking also your intervention account. So the platform is Italian architects. It's not Italian architecture. So it was correct. No, it was correct. But I mean, I wouldn't speak about Italian architecture or about Greek architecture or about Swiss architecture. I would speak about architecture in Italy, or architecture in Greece, or architecture in Switzerland, for instance. So what I mean is that I think it's important to see that we are no more in a period where everything is quite clear and there is a direction. The society has a clear goal, has a clear task, has a clear vision. There are many visions that are contemporarily in the same time possible. So if I have a look what is happening in Italy, I can say that there are different situations, and every situation in every city or every region of Italy drives to other answers. If I have to find out a kind of coherence between different architectures that are realized in Italy, there are more coherences. I think there is a kind of agreement that architecture is always something that has to do with the city. I said already before, and I think in Italy it's very clear. So the Italian, they are thinking always as citizens, even if they build outside in the country. So the idea is always to be as a kind of city man, also outside. I think this is something that is very deep inside in the Italians. Then when I spoke, I did also some exhibitions about Italian architects. And one was in the States, the title was Italy Now, for instance. It was a question point. What does it mean to build now in Italy? Does it some kind of Italian architecture exists? And the answer was quite from all architects, no, there is no Italian architecture, but there are possibilities. So sometimes you are similar to somebody else because you cannot do something. So you would like to build in wood, but then there is no knowledge, so nobody is building in wood, for instance, here, but it's not because you don't want, it's just because you cannot. So it's not it's a similarity because of the impossibility. Sometimes it's a problem of situation. And what is something that comes often to Italian architects speaking about architecture, they use a lot of time the word beauty. That beauty we know now is not so easy to define, but they use beauty, not only interesting. And I think it's, again, something that maybe you can say is a kind of ground statement, basic statement. I think yes. I think that every crisis, every difficulty is a possibility to go further, because you have to think twice to everything you do. So it's not just to copy paste or make a reaction that is already. So you have to find, you have to search, and searching means to go deeper in this sense. To go deeper, to put your questions now about the crisis, could be questions that comes out also about sustainability, this kind of. But sustainability is not only a question of using too much or few materials or using some good or wrong materials. I think sustainability is also what can be afforded by a society. So is some kind of form acceptable by a society? So can they sustain this also philosophically or not? it's much more complex, and I think in this crisis, in this moment, comes out exactly this possibility to think different. It's a difficult question in the sense that there it depends. I think when you do a book and you want that also non-architects could be interested in the books, in the themes, in the texts that are in the book, then you have to project this. So you have to deal with the question. I think it depends if you do. I did some monography about some architects where I tried to figure out general themes that are not only for architects important. So maybe somebody can find it out quite interesting also if it's not an architect, he is not an architect. And so some other books were dealing more with themes, and there is easier because the themes are not only question about architecture. We have general themes that are important for us as society. Architecture belongs to society, and in this sense I think it's important. This is a way where you can write or work out books that can also interest other people. And but you have to project this, you have to find out a way that the book is really readable from different points of view. I know several books, for instance. Sometimes there are books that are not for architects that are very important for architects. I quoted before The Invisible Cities of Italo Calvino, that for me is very an important book in this sense because it opens visions. So I think you can get this when you work out the possibility of having visions that makes you take a desire to do this, to do something that can become architecture, also for non-architects. Being coherent with what I said before, to me it would be easier to say maybe 10 cities, so to say. Because I think what is important is to try to always be aware that when you do a building, you are not doing a kind of design object that you can place everywhere. It has always to do with a context, with a reality. It is there, in this city, this corner of the city, beside this building, in this moment, 2010, for instance. And this is important because if you don't work this way, you go back to the idea of the event that you do this, tomorrow who doesn't care, nobody cares about this. And so in this sense, I would say, to me it would be very, as example, I would say a city like Split, that is in Croatia. It's a city that was a palace for Diocletian. So in the Roman period it was a building, so to say, and now it's a city. So it's a city within a building, and the building as a city. This is a very strong example. Then I would say New York, for the way the city is also a structure and a series of architectures in the same time. I would say Beijing because it's another concept. So I would say to go outside and around the corner and to find out always, because I think it's important. Of course there are hierarchies and there is monuments and things that are much more important than others. But it's important for us as architects to find out everywhere a kind of suggestion, a kind of beauty, a kind of possibility. So the next church, but also the next street, but also the next corner could be the possibility. But I make a list anyhow.
Thank you very much.
As a possibility, I think one could be the Villa Hadriana near to Rome. That is a villa for Emperor Hadrian. That is a kind of collection of buildings he saw around the empire at that time, and he tried to build like a kind of library of buildings, one-to-one, not direct, not a copy, but inspirations there. And so making a jump now could be interesting and good to understand what is happening now in architecture, thinking now about buildings really quite as objects, to go to the Vitra campus, northern to Basel, so in Weil am Rhein, south of Germany there, where you have buildings of Herzog de Meron, Tadao Ando, Frank Gehry, Zaha Hadid, Alvaro Siza, and not because I think it's important that the building has a signature, it's the opposite for me, But I think there you can understand what's happening now in architecture. And you can see it's really a kind of museum of living, open museum for living architecture. And this somehow a kind of pendant to this Villa Adriana. Then I would say the Lincoln's Inn in London, the Museum of John Soane, that is very incredible. It's incredible because there you have a condensation of histories, ideas and spaces in a very small building. Then I would say to go to Karnak in Egypt. It is an amazing space, an amazing building that is dealing with layering in horizontal. Then to go to Rome, to San Clemente, that is a church on a church on a church. No, it's an old Roman villa. They built a church on it in the Middle Age, and they built a church on it in the Manierism period, so 16th century. So you have a kind of vertical layering. That is very incredible to understand how architecture and city deals. You see that are elements growing, becoming another thing, because they used this as foundations for the new building, but just some things. So at the end, the new building has nothing to do with the old one, but in the same time there are some points where they deal together. And then again in Rome, San Carlino, a church by Borromini. It's incredible, the quality of space. Really, you go there and you are astonished, you stay without words. It's really something that is breathing together with you. And if I can add something more, I could say the Terms in Vals by Peter Zumthor is very a strong experience as all the terms. If you also go to Budapest, for instance, you have beautiful. It's very strong because you have to enjoy this with your body. You are there quite naked. You go in the water, in hot water, cold water, so you experience architecture in another way, with all your senses together. And quite interesting, quite strong, I don't like when I say interesting, quite strong, quite intriguing is the building of Sana, so Sejima, in Lausanne, the new learning center there. It's a very unexpected way to deal with the question of studying together. So the space is very central there. And space is very important for architecture. For at the end, we are making kind of shells to make space possible. So I would like to finish with two of my favorite examples that are, the one is the Villa Malaparte or Casa Malaparte in Capri by Alberto Libera. That is it's not an object because it's part of the rocks on the seaside. And the other one is the Casa Girasole, so the sunflower house by Luigi Moretti in Rome. That is an amazing building dealing with the question being in Rome in the 50s was realized, so being in Rome in the 50s, but dealing together with Rome as an eternal city.